Good morning. Welcome to another Read Aloud from Hero. Yesterday we left off at a high tension point. Our main character was in the field and he heard a voice. So we had to figure out who that voice is. Let's dive right in after a sip of coffee. Everybody, you ready? Me too. You're such a good listener. The old man wasn't much taller than Zach. He had snow white hair, a lot of it, and a wispy white beard to go with it. He was wearing faded jeans and one of those old leather bomber jackets that hung on him a bit, as if it were a size too large. A plain gray sweatshirt showed underneath, and he had on a pair of old Reebok sneakers that looked older than he was. He was smiling, maybe as a way of telling Zach not to be afraid, like that was gonna work. "What do you think you're doing, sneaking up on me like that?" Zach shouted. "Didn't think I was," the old man said. "Well, you're wrong." "Calm down, Zach," the old man said. "I'm sorry I scared you." "You didn't scare me," Zach said. "And how do you know my name?" "Friend of the family," the old man said. He smiled again, put out his hand, but Zach ignored it. "Then how come I don't know you?" "Simple. You weren't ready yet." "Ready for what?" "For you to know me the way I know you." It had taken all of a minute for Zach to feel as if he were walking in circles, even standing still. "You said you'd been waiting for me," Zach said. "So I did, and so I have." "You haven't told me your name." "Call me Herbert." "Okay, Mr. Herbert. You live around here?" The old man shook his head. "I was just out here observing, I guess you could say." "How come I didn't see you before this?" "Because I didn't want you to, Zach." It startled him. Only his dad ever called him Zach Man. Ever. It had started as a joke because, when he was little, Zach was always eating on the run. I don't need Pac-Man," his dad said to him one time. "I've got my very own Zach Man." It had stuck for his dad, anyway. No one else had ever called him that. "Don't call me Zach," Zach said now. "I'm sorry. I know that was your dad's nickname for you," the old man said. "Like I told you, kid, I'm a friend of the family." "Who's been waiting for me out here?" "Correct." He thought of the way the taxi driver had described this place, the middle of nowhere. For some reason, Zach flashed to all the times he'd been told not to talk to strangers. The way all kids are told that from the time they're old enough to walk out of their parents' sight. Now, here he was, with the perfect stranger, this old man who seemed to know way too much about him, and who talked in riddles. "You keep saying you're a friend of the family," Zach said, "but I don't recall my dad ever mentioning a friend of his named Mr. Herbert." "No reason for him to. There was a lot your dad never told you about himself. Am I right, Zach Man?" "I told you. Stop calling me Zach Man." "As you wish," Mr. Herbert smiled. "And you can put the coin away. I promise I won't steal it." Zach looked down, opened his hand as if to make sure the Morgan was still there. He said, "How did you know?" "Because I know about you," Mr. Herbert said. "It's what I'm trying to tell you. I know about your father's death, and I know about your life." His eyes darted all around as he nodded. "A life that we both know is changing faster than the weather." Zach stared at him, this old man who not only knew what was in his hand, but what was in him. He thought about turning and running, getting away from him right now, but he knew he wouldn't. He knew that somehow Mr. Herbert was the reason why he was here. "There are things you need to know about your father," Mr. Herbert said. "Well, like what?" "Like how much of his life was a lie," the old man said. A blast of wind nearly knocked both of them over as a huge thunderclap boomed from out east over the water. "My father didn't lie," Zach said. "Ever." "That may be a matter of opinion." "What do you want from me, Mr. Herbert?" "Let's start by taking a walk." He started to put a hand on Zach's shoulder. Zach leaned away from it, like a boxer pulling back from a punch. The old man shrugged and made a gesture that said, "Follow me," and Zach did, a few steps behind. Maybe 50 yards from where the plane hit, on the bay end of the field, was a stone wall he hadn't even noticed. The old man sat down when he came to it, patted a spot next to him. "Just a second," Zach said, and pulled out his cell, checking the time on it. 1:20. He couldn't chase Mr. Herbert around this conversation forever, like chasing him around was a video game, or through a maze. The jitney was scheduled to go back to Manhattan at 2 o'clock. He thought about texting Kate. Call her if you want, Mr. Herbert said. Won't bother me. I was sort of hoping you'd bring her along. How did you know? You're starting to sound like a broken record, boy. So, you know Kate too? In a manner of speaking. And am I supposed to know you, Alba? And I suppose you know Alba and Uncle John? The old man smirked. Even your buddy Spence. Zach thought. It's like he's been following me. He said, were you here the day the plane crashed? Did you see it happen? Didn't need to, Mr. Herbert said. What happened to him had been happening for a long time, and he was the only one who didn't see it. On either side of the fight. What does that mean, Zach said. You either saw the crash or you didn't. And the thing is, I tried to warn him. You tried to warn him, Zach said? About what exactly? You ever heard the expression about people starting to believe their own press clippings? That's what started to happen to your father. You're telling me that the day my dad did something that caused this to happen. The old man paused a beat before answering. In a way, yes. Zach Harriman was starting to get dizzy now, trying to keep up with this, all of it swarming around him like flies. Mr. Herbert said, it wasn't just one thing, mind you. It was a lot of things, over a lot of years. Almost like he was another very smart guy accumulating too much debt. Listen, Zach said, I have to get back to the city soon, so if you know something about my dad's accident, even though I don't think it was an accident, how about you just tell me? Oh, you're not ready for that yet, the old man said. You're closer than you used to be, a lot closer, but still not quite there. Zach started to say something smart back to him, but the old man held up a hand, stopping him. And there are things I could tell you about both your father and yourself that you need to find out for yourself. That's the way it worked for him, and that's the way it has to work for you. The only way. I wish I knew what you were talking about, Zach said, but I don't, and I don't have any more time for this. Another smile. Actually, you do. Trust me. Trust you, Zach said. I don't have any idea who you are, really, or if Mr. Herbert is even your name, or if you really knew my dad at all. The old man put out his hand and let me see the coin for a second. He said, the old man put out his hand and said, let me see the coin for a second. Something about the casual way he asked made Zach do it. Zach unclenched his fists, held his palm open, and handed it over. And when it was in the old man's hand, it was as if a switch had been thrown, the coin suddenly as bright and brilliant as some kind of neon light, almost like the Morgan was on fire. The old man's face was lit by it too. You should trust me because I was the one who first told your father he had the magic in him, Mr. Herbert said. He tried to hand the coin back to Zach, but Zach pulled his hand away, as if touching it would be like touching a hot stove. Don't be afraid, boy, the old man said. You've got magic too. He flipped the coin in the air between them, and Zach caught it. The old man turned and began walking away. Wow. Okay, so that ends chapter 13, but I want to read just a little bit further. Chapter 14. Magic. What did that mean? Zach knew he couldn't just let the old man walk away like this, not knowing if he'd ever see him again. He'd come here looking for answers, and now he had what felt like 100 more questions. Wait! The old man was moving faster than Zach expected, away from the crash site, deeper into the field, about to disappear into grass as tall as he was, grass that seemed to have sprung up while they had been talking. Zach ran after him, pulling out his cell, seeing that it was 1:30 already, knowing that his chance of making the 2 o'clock bus was disappearing as fast as Mr. Herbert. And then, just like that, the old man was gone. Impossible, Zach thought. He'd only looked down at the phone for a second, long enough to check the time. He ran harder to where he had last seen Mr. Herbert. Zach ran as though there was an engine inside of him, propelling him. Yet, one more time, he felt out of control, chasing the unknown. Only this time, the need made him feel almost desperate. No life, not life and death, but close enough. He had to find this old man. He had to find the one person who seemed to know the changes that had been taking place inside of him, who claimed to know his father and how he died. I was the one who first told your father he had the magic in him. Zach ran through the high grass toward the water, toward the darkest part of the sky, the Morgan trying to burn a hole in his palm of his hand. He ran, ignoring the high grass as it whipped him across the face, feeling as if the wind of the day were at his back now. Closed his eyes and ran faster, feeling like he was the only one flying now, across the field where his father had crashed. Life had become invisible. When he opened his eyes, like he was coming out of some kind of dream, Zach saw that he was now running across the sheep meadow in Central Park. Saw that he was home. But how? Zach leaned against a tree out of breath, put the Morgan dollar in his pocket, and pulled out his cell phone. 1:30, the same time he had seen when he was still trying to make the 2 o'clock bus more than 100 miles from here. As if he had texted himself home. As if by magic. Wow. Alright, so that's the end of chapter 14, but I want to read just a little bit further. I'm starting to figure some stuff out. I want to see what else we'll get. He started walking down Fifth Avenue toward home, before remembering he couldn't show up there without Kate, and the Knicks game wasn't close to being over yet. Tip-off had been at 1, which meant the second quarter was just about to begin. Maybe I should just text myself over to the Garden, Zach thought. See if he could make himself appear in the corner of 33rd and 7th, the way he had in Central Park. Thinking, okay, this is seriously weird. Something had just happened to him, something that the old man said connected to Zach to his dad. Something that made no sense, not in the real world anyway. Don't be afraid, boy, the old man had said to him. You've got the magic too. Like this was the movies or TV, like he was in the show Heroes that he used to watch, or had climbed into an old Fantastic Four comic book. Yet, he wasn't made up. And this was no movie. Could he really have powers? He needed to talk with Kate. He needed the power of her. No secrets between them on this. Tell her everything. Leave out nothing. Hope that she didn't think he'd lost his mind. Ask her to help him figure out what it all meant. He needed to see her right now. Prove to her that he was back in the city and still not out on the island getting ready to board that 2 o'clock bus. Zach reached into his pocket. Not the one with the Morgan dollar inside. His other pocket. Found the ticket to the Knicks that he'd left there. He offered it to Kate before he'd left, telling her she should ask somebody to go to the game with her. She'd given him a look and said, What, a blow your cover? No way. Zach didn't run this time, downtown. Zach didn't run this time, downtown and then cross town to the Garden. He used conventional transportation, putting his hand up and hailing a New York City taxi and saying the words his dad used to let him say. Take me to the Garden. Once saying that seemed like all the magic he'd needed. Interesting. He didn't text Kate on the way or call to tell her he was coming. Zach didn't completely understand why he wanted to surprise her, but he did. Just be there next to her when she turned around. He got out of the taxi in front of the Garden Marquee on 7th, walked through the lobby with its huge color photographs of current Knicks players, past some murals showing the great Garden athletes of the past, handed his ticket to the man at the turnstiles, and went up the escalator to the floor of the arena, hearing his first cheers from inside as he got closer to the game. Usually, his excitement at being at the Garden would start as soon as he walked in off the street, but not today. The excitement was knowing he was about to see Kate and have her see him. That had something even more amazing to show her than a Wilson Chandler dunk. He kept showing ushers his ticket, telling them he knew where his seat was, and he made his way down toward it. He looked up at the clock above the court, saw there were 4 minutes left in the first half. David Lee was at the free throw line. When he got close, he spotted Kate's ponytail and saw her leaning forward, all of her energy. Zach sometimes thought you could light her whole building on fire with it. Focused on her man, Lee, who made the first free throw. How's the game? Zach said, not waiting, just sitting down next to her. She was as startled as Zach had been by Mr. Herbert, like she was seeing a ghost. Whoa, she said. Whoa yourself. You can't be here, she said, eyes big. I know. Oh, good, as long as you know. Not only do I know, I can explain. David Lee made his second free throw, and the crowd cheered. The Celtics called a timeout. The Knicks City Dancers came out to perform one of their numbers to some hip-hop music Zach vaguely recognized. Music exploding from everywhere, as if everything underneath the spoked garden ceiling had turned into a giant boombox. You cannot explain how you made it all the way to the Hamptons and back by now, Kate said over the music, unless you flew. Zach smiled and said, I sort of did. Then he told her they needed to talk and couldn't do it here. Just like that, Kate grabbed her book bag from underneath the seat, and they left. When they were down the escalators and back in the lobby, Kate said, okay, this is as long as I'm waiting. We've got some major weirdness going on here. Did you get on that bus before or not? I did, Zach said. Walk with me and I'll try to explain. They walked up 34th Street and then started heading east, past Macy's and Herald Square. The words came out of Zach like a blast of air. He told her about how strange he'd been feeling lately, like someone else had been living inside of him. He told her about the cab dropping him off by Land's End, and then told her about the old man, this stranger who seemed to know everything about his dad and him. Now he was certain that the man knew even more, including about the crash. He told her what Mr. Herbert had said about the magic. Magic, she said? Like pulling a rabbit out of your hat? Or a quarter from behind your ear? Not exactly. Then what exactly? They were already to Fifth Avenue by now, ready for the long, straight shot up to the apartment. You said I could tell it in my way, Zach said, and he had been, trying to tell it in some kind of order, as it had all happened, knowing the whole time he was saving the best stuff for last. Okay, I'll stop talking, Kate said. See, when I said that I flew here, I wasn't lying. Only I didn't take a plane or a helicopter. I started running after the old man, and the next thing I knew, well, I was back here. You ran all the way from the Hamptons to New York City. Please tell me you're not making this up, Kate said. That you didn't hop off the jitney at the airport and stop and take a cab back to the city just to game me? Zach told her the truth. Not my brand. She stared at him and then said, I know. Neither one of them moving. Powers, Kate said. Yeah. Well, that's a little unexpected. You think? She smiled then, not the way she did when she was making fun of him. Just a smile that told Zach she believed him. It was the kind of smile that made him feel as if everything was going to be all right, even though he knew that probably wasn't true. That nothing was going to be the same for him ever again. I guess that leaves me with only one question, Kate said. Shoot. Kate Parede smiled at him again and said, Are you going to have to wear a cape? Oh, okay. So that's the end of chapter 15. We'll stop here on 16, but at least we've got some answers and a lot more questions. It's interesting, though, that Zach has these powers. We're not quite sure what they are. We know his dad talked about them at the beginning of the story when he was facing the bad guys, and we know that Zach was able to travel or transport himself very quickly over a long period, or a long distance, I should say. And it's kind of cool that Kate not only left a game that she was really excited to watch, but she believes such a weird story. I guess it just tells what kind of friends they are. Real good friends. Alright, I think tomorrow we'll find out a little bit more, and maybe we'll read a couple extra chapters tomorrow as well. I hope you're enjoying the story. I'll see you next time. What do you think, buddy? Yeah? You just want to stay here all day and relax? What if we go for a walk? You want to go for a walk? Yeah? Alright, let me upload this, and then we'll take a walk, okay? Alright.